The rest of that project was following a Mono Repos, and they were just miserable all the time because it's going to take a day to update package JSON, or it takes hours to run a build and get a pull request accepted. I mean, why? What is the benefit of all that? Hey everybody. So today I wanted to try something new. I wanted to try and do something that I see a lot of other YouTubers and podcasters do, which is kind of just a off the cuff rant video. I'm not sure I can do the format really well, but I'm going to try it and see how it turns out. So this is a rant. I do not get the Mono Repo thing. I do not understand why technical directors of large software projects enforce a rule that there be one repository. So it just doesn't make sense to me. I just don't get the Mono Repo. I could be wrong. I'm willing to be wrong, and I would love to hear some arguments for it, but I don't get it. So let me explain the two options if you're not aware. So this discussion really only makes sense for very large projects, probably across, dozens of developers. I'm not really sure where the cutoff would be. If it's only one or two or three developers, it certainly makes sense for them to put their work into a single repository. But once you get beyond like 6 to 10 people, it's questionable. And so the alternatives are, everybody puts all of their work into one source control repository, a Git repo, or they all work independently in different repositories, and the work is somehow, ultimately has to roll up into one system. And so how does it do that? Well, we have two big ways that it can do that. One is packages, and the other is web APIs. You could call it microservices, you could call it service-oriented architecture, but basically some kind of hosted service. So those are the two options. You got services and you got packages. And very often it's nice if a package wraps a service, and so it provides a nice way to consume that. In the early 80s, probably the godfather of software engineering, Fred Brooks, penned an essay called No Silver Bullet. And basically he was looking at all the efforts to really try and improve the cost of delivering software by at least an order of magnitude. And he just went through item after item and said, that's not going to work, that's not going to work, that's not going to work. He was largely right. But I would say, it is certainly faster to deliver software systems today than it was 40 years ago. So I do think we have seen something that could be called a silver bullet, or it's at least really accelerated, and that's off-the-shelf packages. And he makes an allusion to that in the essay, that could be a possibility. And that has really come to fruition, that today when I start a software project, I don't start from the ground, from the ground up. I take many packages off the shelf. In fact, it's kind of a joke, if you're working on an NPM project, how many hundreds and thousands of packages you consume. So there's a very mature and established process for consuming packages. And, part of that is versioning. We have something called semantic versioning. And part of that is release notes and describing these are the changes that we made in this package. These are the breaking changes, blah, blah, blah. It seems so odd to me because to just throw that away, because a Mono Repo is basically saying, no, we don't want any of that packaging stuff. We just want to link to stuff directly, and whatever version of the stuff that we get, we don't specify it explicitly. We just get whatever is there that day. Whereas in a world where you have versioned and packaged dependencies, you can say, okay, right now we're using version 2.5, and tomorrow we're going to try and change to version 3.0. And if it doesn't work, we'll go back to 2.5, or maybe we'll roll back to 2.9. You have all that flexibility, and it's very cheap and easy to specify. there's so much cost with the Mono Repo. So one of the best projects I ever worked on, I was part of a very large project. It had a back end, it had a front end, a very complex front end. And I enjoyed working on it so much because all I delivered at the end of the day was an npm package. And I would treat my teammates as customers. So I would make releases of my package and I would document in the release notes, like, here's what changed, here's breaking changes. I would follow Simver and I would, change the major version whenever there was a breaking change. That project was so enjoyable to work on. Meanwhile, my customers, who were teammates effectively, the rest of that project was following a mono repo. So I was kind of the odd man out in this little repo over here, but I was able to argue to do that. And they were just miserable all the time because it's like, oh, well, it's going to take a day to do some, to update package JSON, or it takes hours to run a build and get a pull request accepted. I mean, why? Like, what is the benefit of all that? There's a very, very real cost in demoralizing your developers. If it takes hours, multiple hours to run a build, you're going to demoralize your developers. Even if you have a nice pull request flow, pull requests have helped us a lot. The ability to kind of not necessarily worry about breaking the build when I commit. If I commit on a branch and then, I see the branch build, but there's still that time lag. Okay, let me do my commit. Let me see if the build passes. And then someone else has to, be on the hook to approve that pull request and pull it into the main branch. And so there's just that time lag. And then the build may need to get run again after it's merged. Many, many hours. Like, why would you demoralize your developers in that way? I just don't get it. Demoralized developers eventually quit. And that's expensive. So, the the whole point of this is maybe somebody's going to come reply to me with a really nice, cogent argument for why mono repos are a good idea for certain teams, maybe certain team sizes, maybe certain types of large projects. It makes sense. The arguments I've heard, well, it's like at any given moment, I have, I know exactly what version. I can take a snapshot across every file, everything, and know exactly what version is deployed to production. I just don't find that argument compelling. I mean, you can do the same thing across multiple repos. If you wanted to do that, you could take the SHA-1 hash of, multiple repos and say, well, this SHA-1 hash, this SHA-1, this SHA-1, this SHA-1, and you could have a snapshot of all the code that's in production. But you don't have the flexibility in a mono repo to just say, today we're using version 2.5 of Jacob's package. Tomorrow we're using version 3 of Jacob's package. And then the day after that, we're using version 2.9 of Jacob's package. Like, why would you give up that flexibility? And why would you pay the price of these extremely long build times and merge times? So that's my rant. I'm open to having my mind changed. I hope it's been interesting. Let me know what you think of the format, and let me know if there's some other software engineering leadership topics that might be interesting.